Okay, I think we shall start because maybe some of you have flights to catch back home, to whom I wish a safe trip back home. Others may enjoy the city of Marrakesh and its secret spots and its very well-known spots as well to do some tourism. So we are at the end of this World Summit, World PTX Summit. We have been following very enriching and very expanding, toward the future presentations. We will now finish with, as I was saying before, we'll finish with the backbone of every single project, like renewable, green hydrogen. It is, first of all, the regulatory environment, of course, and the funding. So this session, or the purpose of this session, is, of course, to know more what prevents, to have a solid regulatory framework able to encourage the development of Power to X. So yes, we have, as it was pointed out, we have different purposes, but we also have, while speaking about green hydrogen, some of the barriers that are shared. So the regulation is one of them, and the funding as well. So on the financing or funding side, this session will allow to discover the different ways of financing dedicated to the fields in question. So we'll start right now, the last but by no means least session of this third day of the World Summit, PTX. Jingle. Okay, so I'm now calling, okay, I'm now calling on stage the moderator, la modératrice. And by the way, I want to congratulate the organizers for gender equality. I mean, the first panel was really gender equal. So the second one, I think, will be as much equal as the first one. But anyways, we have to congratulate such efforts for gender equality, and a subject very dear to my heart. Donc, la modératrice, and she knows Morocco very well. She did a lot of consulting missions with different Moroccan institutions, namely Mazen. She is as well the member of the Fédération des Nerfs de l'Énergie, of Energy Federation. She worked on the 1309 law opening renewable energies to the private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Mrs. Anne Lapierre, Global Head of Energy, Norton Rose Fulbright. Yes, you shall introduce. I have maybe one question to you. If you shall take your, yes, you will be asking questions, but just as I did with the previous moderator, I have a little question concerning. So, do you think today, honestly, that regulations are a barrier? How to transform this barrier of regulations into an opportunity?
Well, I think we will have the opportunity to discuss with the great panelists I have the chance to moderate. There is, as we've seen over the past 3 days, a large number of projects, a large number of ideas, competition. So it's a race for investment, with competition between projects, competition between companies, and also in terms of attractiveness, competition between countries. So it is important to adjust the legal framework to be as efficient, as attractive, as speedy as possible to ensure that Morocco can attract a massive amount of interest, fundraising, and implementation and achievement. Otherwise, we will see that we've got a large number of available financing and institutions which are ready to actually support the development. But when you look at the number of roadmaps which have been circulated and published worldwide, you can see that there is definitely not enough time and people to look at all of these projects in the coming 2 years and make investment decisions. So the question is, who is going to be the main attractive ones? Who is going to be the winning one? And obviously, the regulation is a key factor in all of that to give visibility, to provide security of investment, and to ensure that there is an adequate legal framework which is put in place in order to support the quick development of those projects. And the country which will do that will be, no doubt, the winning one. So let's discuss that further.
Thank you, Anne, and the floor is yours and your speakers.
Lights. Thank you. So I had the privilege to be quickly introduced. Just a few words about me before speaking about my great speakers. I'm a lawyer at an international law firm called Norton Rose Fulbright, and I'm 100% dedicated to the energy sector. I'm the global head of energy of that firm, which comprises 1,000 energy lawyers around the world. But that's not my main pride. I'm the co-manager of Casablanca office, and as was said by the presenter, I've got the chance to be massively involved in the country, and I've been running a certain number of projects and assisting in key developments such as the gas code, such as the Mazen and the solar development. So I can't wait to actually be addressing the hydrogen projects and support their development in Morocco. We've got a great number of panelists, so I'm going to switch to the presentation of each of them. The format will be similar to the one you've seen before, a presentation of 6 to 8 minutes by the panelists, and then we will have a conversation, discussions among ourselves, and we'll take key questions if there is any from the room in order to actually address in more detail a certain number of key elements. So I welcome all of my panelists to their seats, and I will introduce them one by one when they will take the mic. So before we do so, I will call for my first one, Rita Annan from the IFC. So Rita is the office country manager of IFC. She's a climate expert, a finance expert, obviously, for a large number of years, and she's been working before with the United Nations and a certain number of financial institutions such as UNEP or the Sub-Saharan Africa Efficiency Program for the Mediterranean region. So we are going to listen to Rita first, and then we will hand over to the next speaker, which I'll introduce further later on. Rita, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anne. Bonjour tout le monde, je suis vraiment ravie d'être là parmi vous. Je suis navrée, ma présentation est en français, mais je comprends there's a translation set, sorry, for those who cannot follow in French. So, my name is Rita. Je suis le country officer de l'IFC pour le Maroc. l'IFC, qui est la Société financière internationale. Nous sommes la plus grande DFI, donc institution financière internationale axée sur le secteur privé. Et nous avons une démarche de volontaire et proactive pour accélérer le déploiement d'énergies renouvelables, notamment en Afrique et en Afrique subsaharienne. Donc, pendant les 10 années dernières, nous avons investi plus de... Pardon, j'essaie de passer à la prochaine slide. Je disais, nous avons investi plus de 32 milliards de dollars dans le secteur de l'énergie, dans les pays émergents, dont 70% étaient dédiés à l'énergie renouvelable, ce qui couvre plus ou moins 15 gigawatts de capacité. Nous faisons ça en ayant vraiment une approche intégrée. Donc, on travaille avec le gouvernement, les différents gouvernements, notamment avec notre institution sœur, la Banque mondiale, sur tout ce qui est volet normatif. On travaille aussi surtout avec le secteur privé, les développeurs, en travaillant en amont, et on a une équipe que l'on appelle Upstream. Merci. Et nous avons, comme je le disais, une équipe upstream, et je reviendrai un petit peu plus sur cette équipe, qui permet de faire du développement de pipeline et du co-développement avec les project developers eux-mêmes. Aussi, l'IFC a aussi l'ambition de décarboner l'industrie, et c'est pour ça que nous regardons le green hydrogen avec grand intérêt, parce qu'il ne s'agit pas que d'énergie, mais aussi de ses applications et comment on utilise l'hydrogène. Donc, sur ma prochaine slide, j'ai essayé de montrer un petit peu l'évolution de la technologie et les différents challenges selon les secteurs. Donc, je ne couvrirai pas toute la slide parce que je pense que ça a été couvert par d'autres panélistes avant, mais vraiment, some key messages que je voulais refléter, c'est que l'adoption de l'hydrogène ne se fera pas partout, au même temps et au même niveau. Il faut comprendre que l'adoption de l'hydrogène dépendra vraiment des secteurs et du cas d'usage. Donc, l'hydrogène vert devra devenir bien sûr plus compétitif que l'hydrogène gris et bleu. Et pour cela, plusieurs facteurs vont y contribuer. Bien sûr, le prix de l'énergie, des électrolyseurs, le développement des usages, comme on a dit. Et puis, il faut un environnement propice à l'investissement. Il y a les financements gouvernementaux qui existent et je comprends qu'ils sont en hausse. On a fait une estimation, il y a aujourd'hui plus de 11,4 milliards de dollars par an disponibles pour les projets hydrogène à faible émission de carbone sur la période 2021-2030, donc par an. Donc pour la plupart des pays, ces subventions totalisent moins de 0,1% du PIB, ce qui reste très peu et ce qui est bien en deçà de ce que l'énergie solaire a obtenu dans ses premières années. Mais ça représente toujours une augmentation par rapport à tout ce qu'on a connu pendant ces dernières années. Le secteur privé, bien sûr, a un rôle à jouer avec l'apparition de plusieurs coalitions, et ces coalitions vous ont été présentées, notamment une qui est dirigée par certains de nos clients, avec un objectif global de créer une demande critique pour l'hydrogène, tout en cherchant à réaliser bien sûr des économies d'échelle et des réductions de coûts de production du côté de l'offre. Il y a aussi la communauté financière qui est là, donc nous les DFI, et plusieurs fonds ont été créés dernièrement et dédiés à l'hydrogène. Le soutien d'institutions de financement du développement comme la SFI, donc comme nous, et des fonds concessionnels peuvent jouer un grand rôle. Donc on pense qu'il y a encore un grand rôle que les bailleurs de fonds ont à jouer dans ce landscape, surtout pour les pays en développement. Donc plus concrètement, on intervient vraiment sur tout le project cycle d'un projet en hydrogène. Donc, j'ai parlé de l'upstream. Dans nos équipes, on a plus de 200 personnes qui sont là pour développer des projets en amont. Donc, qui sont basés globalement et qui travaillent sur tout le secteur, dans le secteur de l'énergie, et qui sont là vraiment pour co-développer des projets avec les développeurs. Et aussi travailler, comme je le disais, avec les gouvernements et avoir ce dialogue-là avec les régulateurs. Donc, on a une plateforme conjointe, notamment avec la Banque mondiale, et puis je laisserai ma collègue Nadia vous en parler plus en détail. Et nous couvrons le Chili et le Costa Rica dans cette étude. On intervient aussi pour développer des business models, donc tout ce qui est étude de faisabilité, dialoguer avec les pionniers et puis comprendre les risques et comment allouer les risques, parce que c'est quelque chose qui compte énormément dans le financement. J'ai parlé de co-développement, donc l'IFC peut apporter son savoir-faire pour co-développer des projets. Et nous avons des projets notamment en cours en Barbade, en Chili, au Kenya et même. Et puis, quelqu'un a parlé d'écosystème. Donc, c'est vraiment une approche que l'on a. Il ne s'agit pas de just throw assets. Il s'agit vraiment de développer un écosystème autour du green hydrogen. Et donc, on a vraiment une approche sectorielle où on va travailler avec les deux industriels, on va travailler avec le côté infra aussi. Et puis finalement, il y a un volet dont la collègue de Irene a parlé ce matin, c'est le volet certification. Donc, accompagner les clients pour la certification de l'hydrogène vert qui sera un vrai game changer. On pense que la certification sera essentielle pour une garantie d'off-taker, un off-take qui est stable et qui est durable aussi dans la durée. Donc, l'IFC a développé une expertise notamment avec tout ce qui est Edge, mais aussi dans les green bonds. Et puis, on veut se focaliser et du coup faire tout le life cycle du projet. Pour finir, j'ai été bref, mais je voulais réitérer qu'on pense aussi que le Maroc a de grands atouts pour devenir un vrai player, notamment dans le landscape de l'hydrogène, et nous souhaitons l'accompagner. Voilà, je m'arrête là. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Rita, pour cet exposé. J'invite maintenant Nadia Taouban, qui travaille à la Banque mondiale et qui est en charge du projet Green Hydrogen. Nadia is a senior energy specialist at the World Bank, and she's based in Washington, D.C. Her work focuses on energy transition programs across multiple markets, supporting sustainable and bankable development of renewables and green hydrogen, with the mobilization of private capital and associated fundraising efforts, in particular relating to climate finance. Nadia is supporting at the moment several governments on the development and operationalization of their green hydrogen strategies. Nadia, can you explain in more details what you do at the moment?
Sure. I'm just trying to get the slides working. And then, okay, so I think it seems it's working now.
It's in the center one.
Yeah, no, I get it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here today. Every time I come back to Morocco, I'm very impressed to see the progress made, and in particular to see the leadership of Morocco on green hydrogen. It's a critical area for the World Bank. I'm trying to get the next slide to explain to you why. Doesn't seem to be. C'est le vert, oui, j'appuie sur le vert. Oui. Okay. Anyway, let me talk, and maybe meanwhile it would be fixed. The World Bank has adopted its second climate change action plan last year, with an increased ambition to really try to green not only projects but the entire economies. And in this context, I would like to emphasize one new tool that the World Bank has adopted, which is the CCDR, its Climate Change Development Report, that we are now preparing for all countries. And we just finalized the one for Morocco. And the idea is really to be able to tackle the disconnect between climate and development. What we noticed is a lot of countries have their NDCs, but those are siloed from development policies and do not always inform finance decisions. So the World Bank has put in place this approach to support countries prioritize their actions. And we are looking through this report at three, let's say, broad policy spaces. We look at sectoral and macroeconomic policies and investments that create synergies between climate action and short to medium term objectives. We look also at trade-offs between policies and investments needed to achieve some policies, climate objectives and other policies. So for example, decommissioning coal infrastructures is great from a climate perspective, but it has to be done with additional targeted support for local communities to avoid adverse impact on communities. And we look also how to leverage the private sector at scale. And in this context, green hydrogen, under that approach that I just presented, green hydrogen is critical for the World Bank, given its potential for hard to abate sectors, but also the potential to act as a catalyst for the socio-economic development of those countries who have the prerequisites to position themselves in a competitive manner on green hydrogen. And I think all of us heard during these last days how Morocco is can benefit. I mean, is well positioned on that.
Dear Nadia, just a reminder to all the speakers, you can use the green button on the remote to just pass on the slides, not the red one.
I know
Just
that's
a
what I
small
did.
reminder. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yeah, let me let me take you to some of the key challenges that as the World Bank we have identified and on which we are aiming at supporting governments roll out their green hydrogen programs. Most of them have been already mentioned during these few days, so I will go quickly through them. But first of all is the high cost of electrolyzers. What we hear from the market is that we expect a reduction of 30% by 2030 in terms of electrolyzers cost. And this uncertainty about the evolution of the costs, which are relatively high now, also tend to may deter some investments as people want to defer until those investments are lower. So this is one challenge. Another one is the uncertainty of technical performance. As you have heard in the conference, there is a very limited track record of electrolyzers in operation. And now we are talking about size that are significantly higher than what we know in operation. So there is an uncertainty in terms of technical performance. A lack also of strategies. As Anne mentioned before, it's a race. So countries have a practical approach to launch their first projects, but at the same time, they need to also develop strategies to be able to really make the most out of their resources. There's also coordination needed with the renewable energy generation, as very often the same sites are targeted for green hydrogen production and for renewable energy to serve the national needs, the grid, which at the end is the cost that is paid by the end users. Challenges also on the business models. Rita mentioned that before me. So today we talk about significant amounts to be invested. And what we see is that those projects that are already in construction, for example, such as in Saudi Arabia with the NEOM project, those are projects where they have robust long-term PPA in place. So there is right now an uncertainty on that type of business models to unlock at the moment. Also an uncertainty on the role that the public party can play, the catalytical role that the public party can play to attract the private sector in the green hydrogen business. High cost also of transport infrastructures. It's not only cost, because cost, you heard the head of the international cooperation of Mazen, he mentioned that 2/3 of the cost is linked to this infrastructure and logistics. So there are a number of questions on whether to export or to not only produce green hydrogen and derivatives, but also attract the industries that will use those products locally. So uncertainty at that level. Anne mentioned also before the challenge in terms of experts, skilled people across all the value chain. And also there is a limited governance and adapted regulations. And as it's a race, countries now try to keep up with that race and try to have an attractive, enabling environment to attract the private projects, large scale, robust private projects. So the World Bank, to address those challenges, has Sorry, I'm trying to, still this green button is, anyway, it's working now. So yeah, the World Bank is supporting through 3 different angles. I mean, and here I focus on the World Bank, but in reality, we work, as Rita said, as the World Bank group, so jointly with IFC and MIGA. But here to highlight the type of support that the World Bank is providing to governments to support them and public entities. We support them to develop sustainable and bankable green hydrogen programs. Right now, we are supporting almost 20 countries on that. And that goes from strategies to policies and regulations as well. Thank you. Okay. So for the other speakers, there are 2 green buttons. So it's the upper one and not the lower one. Sorry, everybody, for that. So yeah, so significant technical assistance support, and with a robust component on capacity building to really empower stakeholders on that field. And as it is also a nascent sector with a lot of moving pieces, a lot of things are happening and changing, we have also a component about global knowledge where we try to bring in real time that knowledge to our clients so that they can take informed decisions, in particular as they have this dual approach between launching projects, sometimes scaling up quickly, and at the same time developing a strategy, more short-term, medium-term, long-term, to really make the most out of their resources. And last but not least, concessional financing. I mentioned before the high costs of electrolyzers, the uncertainty on performance, and the need to attract the private sector, and in particular commercial financing, if we really want to develop that at scale. So the World Bank is mobilizing financing on that jointly with IFC more on the private side, whereas on the World Bank, we provide more concessional financing to governments on the critical public investments that are needed to unlock those private investments in green hydrogen. For example, there is right now a discussion with several of our clients on the common infrastructures to be used by the various green hydrogen developers that will come in the country. So I would like to share with you just 2 examples before concluding this presentation. First of all, an example in Chile, where we are supporting the government to set up a green hydrogen facility to mitigate some of the critical risks that have been identified. Chile is trying to develop green hydrogen applications for domestic users, but also for export and from various usages. In this context, the idea is to have a facility that will be rolled out through financial intermediaries, and that will help reduce the cost of electrolyzers. So up to 25% of the cost of the electrolyzers will be funded through concessional financing, the remaining being financed through commercial financing. To reduce also the uncertainty that I mentioned before, linked to the limited track record of electrolyzers, to put in place a liquidity reserve account to cover unexpected and untimely cash needs, and also to mitigate the risk to a revenue stream, here again linked to the limited track record of the technology, but this is more like towards commercial financiers to fund the 6-month debt service reserve account. And that is also critical in that perspective of uncertainty on the business model that I mentioned before. And the objective with this project is to unlock as a first phase 210 megawatt of electrolyzers, knowing that Chile targets 5 gigawatt of electrolyzers by 2025 to unlock more than 6,000 jobs. And yeah, and this support goes also with an additional technical assistance support, where we are advising them on various topics such as certification. One of the speakers mentioned, I think yesterday or the day before, the importance of having a universal scheme in terms of certification. So this is to secure future exports. It's something that on which the World Bank is also working. Another example relates to supporting countries in MENA, and we are also supporting Morocco from that perspective, is supporting the country make the most out of its renewable energy resources and green hydrogen deployment. And we have developed a comprehensive and integrated approach for that. And this is really building on the lessons learned from the development of renewables in the last 10, 20 years in various developing countries to try to come with an integrated approach with articulated around 4 pillars. Number one, a strategic analysis to help the country gauge its competitiveness, critical in that type of nascent market, fast evolving market we are talking about. Also identify relevant business models, identify the role, the catalytical role for the public party to attract the private sector, and identify also the green hydrogen applications that will be prioritized. And once this work is done, we also work with the country to identify what are the prerequisites then to identify green hydrogen development at scale on short-term, medium-term, and long-term basis, looking at what is the optimum energy mix, that is a renewable energy mix that is needed, looking at storage, logistics, infrastructures, common infrastructures, I mean, synergies with water desalination, also the enabling environment, including the tax aspect and the certification. And the idea is really to be able to optimize and coordinate between renewable energy deployment for green hydrogen versus for domestic generation, but also to coordinate on the other aspects and to build an enabling environment as attractive as possible to attract the right stakeholders during that race. And the third point is about how to position green hydrogen as a catalyst for the socioeconomic development of the country. So looking at mapping the local players on the value chain, identifying measures to enhance their positioning. So for example, identifying the technical and financial support needed by local companies, looking also at how to support the local communities in the vicinity of the projects through actions that will enhance their livelihoods and increase their resilience. So, and identify actionable plans to get there. And finally, the last pillar is about integrating all those work streams into a kind of operational investment plan with a cross-sectoral approach, as well as a governmental how can I say, governance approach to make sure that it is rolled out with the right level of implications of all the public stakeholders. The reason why I started this intervention by emphasizing the CCDR climate change development report, I took the time to talk about it at the beginning, is because this silo issue, that's what we are trying to break. And I think if we want to really help governments efficiently deploy sustainable and bankable green hydrogen programs, it's critical to have that type of cross-sectoral approach to really break those silos. So I think now countries, to conclude quickly, have a fantastic opportunity. I'm not going to go again through why green hydrogen, World Bank is supporting it, but I would like just to say that for countries who have the right prerequisites, this is a fantastic opportunity, which is why this type of a comprehensive and integrated approaches are very important. I think it's an opportunity like in the 90s when there was this telecom push and some countries managed to leapfrog. So I think there is this really tremendous opportunity. So thank you very much for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadia. So it's not just hydrogen development, it's a total change in the economy and the way it's been built, not only for energy purposes, but also for the communities and the economy for each countries. Let me welcome you now, Antoine Saleh Dechoux, the director in Morocco of EBRD, the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. Antoine, you are directing EBRD Morocco since 2021, and you've been with the bank since 2013, where you led a certain number of strategic projects and offices such as Tunisia, where you manage a significant scaling up of the bank investment and enhanced policy engagement on the EBRD's green economy transition approach. Before that, you were consulting in London and working at the French Treasury. Obviously, very, very interesting to hear you, Antoine, on what EBRD is planning to do to support the Moroccan development, and obviously hear from you what is your vision in terms of pros and cons of the existing system and what could be done to actually be further attractive. Thank you, Antoine.
Thank you, Anne, and it's very glad to be here. Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for the tip also from my fellow panelists on how to use the remote. Maybe a word about ourselves. So we are one of the largest supplier of climate finance in the 35 countries we operate in. So we work basically from Mongolia all the way to Morocco. So we have invested more than 35 billion euros in the last 5 years across 2,000 green projects, so ranging from renewables, large-scale renewables, to very small SME energy efficiency projects. Recently, our shareholders have upped the ambition for the bank, and we now target to be a majority green bank by the end of 2025. And in fact, we have already achieved that last year at the level of the institution, but also at the level of our business in Morocco. So the way we work, we offer to our client a very tight blend of financing, technical assistance, and policy advisory. On finance, we can offer debt, equity, mezzanine. We invest in capital market instruments. One thing that maybe differentiates us a little bit from some of our fellow IFI colleagues is our ability in almost all of the countries we operate in to finance in local currency. So in addition to major international currencies, we can offer on competitive terms here in Morocco, for example, Moroccan dirham, including at maturity that are suitable for project finance. We've been looking at with great interest at the hydrogen development. Obviously, we have the view that is shared that with carbon capture and storage, this is the only way to decarbonize some hard to abate sectors. And we believe that time is now for Morocco and for countries of the region. Obviously, things have accelerated since the war in Ukraine. Europe has massively increased its target on hydrogen from 7 million tons per year to 20 million tons per year. Half of this will be imported. So for Morocco, there's a very strong card to play, and we're happy to be supporting. We have started focusing on building markets in the region we operate on hydrogen and forging strategic partnerships. Here in Morocco, we are very proud to have signed an MOU with Irezen to assess the investment potential on green hydrogen in the kingdom. We've also signed a similar agreement in Egypt, which is, together with Morocco, the country we see in the region that has the probably highest potential. And we're conducting an in-depth study on all the regions we operate in, which are basically looking at the top-down market assessment with very detailed case studies on specific use cases. And we're starting to speak to potential clients, off-takers, to start building a bankable pipeline. And on the basis of that regional study, one key conclusion for Morocco is that it's one of the countries that could offer one of the lowest levelized cost of production for green hydrogen to supply Europe. And that's on the basis of, one, its proximity to Europe, as a large export market. To its existing export infrastructure, there is actually little investment to be done on the Maghreb pipeline to be able to carry pure hydrogen. And of course, its enormous renewable potential, 26 gigawatt of technical capacity, that's way beyond Morocco's domestic needs. And it has, in particular, an excellent mix of wind and solar. And we know that because the capex on electrolyzers is going to be very high at the beginning, the electricity load factor is very important. And Morocco is able to offer this thanks to excellent wind and solar mix. So now it begs the question of where should we be looking at, because Morocco is big. We know that most of the local demand is going to be the region of Jof Lasfar and Safi around the OCP industrial clusters, where we have good wind, but we don't have much solar. If we look at the east around Ouarzazate, we have excellent solar, but we are far from water access. The best co-located resources are probably going to be in the south, where we have very good wind, very good solar, but no domestic use. So possibly an area for export. So in theory, probably the best mix we could get is using solar resources from the east, wind resources from the south for consumption in the industrial clusters of OCP through direct wires. And that could possibly get us to a levelized cost of 2.6 euros per kilo. And if we add to that grant component and low capital, lower discount rate, and that's where IFIs are going to come to play. We could even think about going to below 2 euros per kilo. And that's, we think, the two main opportunities for Morocco in applications before going into exports to Europe will be domestic. It will be green ammonia. We have a natural off-taker that's going to help jumpstart the industry with OCP, which today imports 12% of the world's supply of ammonia. So it has strong incentive in terms of supply security, price control, but even balance of payment to be a domestic producer. And 2 days ago, the European Parliament has approved its negotiation position on the carbon border adjustment mechanism and has included ammonia in the scope of CBAM and has shortened the free allowance period. So the financial incentives are going to kick in, and green ammonia is going to become even faster, comparatively more competitive. The second application that we see a very good potential for Morocco is green methanol, which, because it's of its higher density, is today probably a better option to decarbonize the shipping industry than hydrogen. And on this, Morocco has several very strong assets. Obviously, the Tanger Med infrastructure, which is a global world-class shipping hub. So off-takers are right there. It's also close to the large CO2 storage clusters of Europe in case we need to import CO2. But in fact, actually, locally, we have CO2 inputs. OCP produces basically 1 million tons of CO2 a year. But that might not be the option of choice for maybe companies that are looking for green methanol. They may be looking for more biogenic inputs. In this case, Morocco actually still has an underdeveloped biomass sector, but there is a big potential thanks to large agricultural and municipal waste. So looking at all of that, we could get to a levelized cost that could get competitive. We're still going to need grants. We're still going to need cheap funding from IFIs. We're going to still need cheap power, and that's maybe a topic we will explore in later on how Morocco needs to do to make sure it can offer actually competitive power. Maybe to finish on what kind of financing structure EBRD can offer to developers in green hydrogen projects. We can be looking at two different structures. One that will be mobilizing grants. We have access to large grants from global climate funds or bilateral donors. or we can be looking at structuring it with guarantees, first loss guarantees. So in particular, we manage a large program on behalf of the EU as part of the EFSD program, which would be very suitable to green hydrogen in order to lower the risks. Because as my colleagues were mentioning it earlier, this is a market we still see a lot of risks. When we look at a project, we want to ask ourselves, what's the off-taker risk? Is it a captive market? What's the merchant risk? Is there export potential? What is the price at which the green molecule will be sold? Is this price regulated? Can we quickly move to it becoming a sort of normal commodity that can be traded on the open market? And obviously, as international lenders, will be also very, very attentive to health and safety aspects. So how can this be transported? Does the transport infrastructure need upgrade? And of course, all the environmental and social aspects as well. Where is the water coming from? Is it sustainable? In short, this is basically how at EBRD we are looking at this, this great opportunity on which, again, we think Morocco is excellently positioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, very much, Antoine, for this presentation. No doubt over lunch you will have a certain number of discussion of very interesting people to understand better how they can get access to your products. Let me welcome now Thorsten Schneider from KfW. Thorsten is the head of energy division for North Africa, but he is also the coordinator of the Power to X task force for KfW banking group. So he's really the person you want to hear from and talk with. Thorsten is with the bank since 2006 and has been working in a large number of countries, Jakarta, Indonesia, Mauritania. But let's listen to you, Thorsten, on hydrogen in the P2X.
Thank you very much, Anne, and thanks very much for inviting me to this panel. Congratulations also to the organizers of this successful World Power-to-X Summit. So talking about green hydrogen financing from a KfW group perspective is not a story of hundreds of successfully implemented or financed projects. It's still quite new to us. We have gone through a learning experience during the last 2 years, I would say, with establishing a research partnership with the Fraunhofer Institute, with working on internal guidelines like sustainability guidelines for green hydrogen financing. We have, of course, been involved in the preparation of specific projects in terms of project study, feasibility study financing, but all in all, I would say it's still a quite new area from a financing perspective. And one of the exercises where we participated last year was a market survey conducted on behalf of the German Ministry for Economy and Climate Action, trying to find out what are the real challenges for financing in our partner countries. And I guess most of the things that are mentioned here have been discussed extensively during the last 2 days. But from a financing perspective, what was important for us to learn was that all of the companies that have been interviewed responded that there is a huge interest in the conventional products of financing, debt, equity, mezzanine, guarantees have been mentioned as well from the industry. And on the other hand, there was also mentioning the bankability gap that the companies still see, the price difference between the green hydrogen or the green derivative compared to the conventional gray product. So the main message of this slide is, yes, there is a huge demand for financing and for the conventional products. And on the other hand, there is also the concern of the developers that public sector should step in order to bridge this bankability gap. That brings me to my second slide. So someone has to fill this bankability gap from the public sector side, and I'm really glad and also a little bit proud that the German government is currently addressing this issue with a number of incentives in order to boost the green hydrogen industry. That reminds me a little bit of the early days of the German energy transformation, the Energiewende, when a lot of public funds have been invested as well in the development of renewable energies. So there is really a great dynamic currently on the government side in Germany, and the international community will also benefit from that, I guess. Just two examples, mid-2020, the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development signed a hydrogen partnership with Morocco. On the same day, the German government published its own national hydrogen strategy with 9 billion euro of public funds, out of which 2 billion euro have been earmarked for international cooperation. And that brings me to that puzzle on my slide here. I have mentioned a few funding programs of the German government. On the right lower corner of this puzzle, I would say it's a classic development cooperation. I mentioned the hydrogen partnerships with Morocco. There exists one with Tunisia as well. For example, here under the umbrella of the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, here also the government is willing to invest grant funds in order to boost the development of the sector in our partner countries. And then there is another ministry, the German Ministry for Economy and Climate Action, that has set up a number of promotional instruments as well. For example, a funding guideline for capital grants for pilot projects internationally. And there exists a second initiative called H2 Global, which you might have heard of. I would say it's a flagship program of this ministry, focusing on subsidizing the OPEX side of projects developing green hydrogen and exporting this to Germany. The piece of the puzzle we are currently working with our government as KfW is on the right upper side. These are investment grant funds with the intention to bring down production cost of green hydrogen or the green derivative to a level of the gray or conventional alternative, and by that also to leverage private financing into the sector. So the main message here is, yes, there is this concern of bankability gaps, but there is also someone, in this case, the German government, that is really willing to invest money in order to bridge this bankability gap. So from our perspective, it's now important to bring together the projects with the public promotional programs and conventional financing products of KfW Group that we can offer. And here we really would like to make a contribution in order to set up a kind of one-stop shop for our partners and clients, where developers that look for green hydrogen financing can receive not only the conventional financing products of KfW, debt and equity, but also receive the viability gap funding that is provided by the German government. By that, we would like to contribute to good business cases, to the bankability of the projects. And maybe one last remark, why I have mentioned here also the colleagues of domestic promotion in KfW Group. I think one of the learning experiences during the last 2 years from our side was also that value chains are long. We all have in mind projects that could produce, for example, in Northern Africa, where the product is transported via ships or pipelines to Europe or Germany, and end users using the product in Europe and Germany. And we have institutional-wise set up a task force that I'm heading, trying to bring together all the different parts of KfW, also the colleagues that provide financing domestically in Europe and in Germany, because we think it's important to look at projects with long value chains from different angles in order to be able to really provide our partners and clients tailor-made financing and products. Thank you very much to that.
Thank you very much, Thorsten. So that was the presentation from World Bank, IFC, EBRD, KfW. And as you can see, there is no yet commercial banks which come to talk about the hydrogen development. We probably will have a discussion later on why or when that could happen. Let's switch now to the vision of the consulting side in light of the existing development. To start with, let me welcome Mr. Rabi El-Basha. Rabi is working at Engage Consulting. Welcome. Do you speak here or there? Oh, yeah, you can speak here. So you are currently a business analysis at this multinational, which is based in Cairo and Dubai, and you're also a very close in collaboration with Corte Law Firm, from whom we will have the chance to hear today as well. So you accompanying a German parliament for the FDP party in certain number of development, and you so very active and introduced to the hydrogen development in cooperation inter alia with Germany. So Rabi, if you want to kick off. Just before you do so, we started later because of the earlier presentation. So just for you to organize, we will stop before or at maximum 1:30. So I hope you will be not starving too much, but just for you to know, we won't go after 1:30. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Big thank you to the whole team of IRSN and UMC-SPE for the organizations of this high summit, and a great pleasure to
Rabi, do you mind putting the mic a bit closer to your mic?
I'm just a little bit afraid of COVID, but thank you. A great pleasure to participate again to this summit on green hydrogens, and a big thanks to the whole team of IRSN and UMC-SPE. Dealing with the emerging legal framework of green hydrogens in a few minutes is really a big challenge, so I will focus on the legal framework of hydrogen transmissions or transportations by pipe or grid. Based on the recent recommendations of the Agency for Cooperation of Energy Regulators, the progressive approach is to regulate or not to regulate. This approach depends on competition law and is essentially based on principles that already exist on the European gas and electricity gas sectors. So it is necessary to regulate if, first of all, there are essential infrastructures that blocks the market entry, or if there are risks of vertical concentrations effect. For example, the fact that an integrated company is both in charge of the management of the grid, example, transports or distributions, and active in the competitive market, for example, production. If the parties makes massive demand access to the transmissions infrastructure, there will certainly be a need for legislations to avoid this concentrations effect. In the same way, it is probably not necessary to subject regional clusters to a regulated regime. As a reminder, there are 1,600 approximately kilometers of pipeline operations in Europe belonging to Air Product, Air Liquide, Lint, and which directly connect hydrogen producers to hydrogen consumers. The current Moroccan draft law 94/17 on the gas sector includes the guiding principle that you can see on the slide, and which was implemented in 1997 in Europe. But there is no provisions of pure hydrogen networks, grid, and this has been pointed out by the recent Competitions Council. This is also a mistake in our opinion. However, this draft bill will give the foundations of a regulated infrastructure with a regulatory authority that will be the STGN, the National Society for Gas Transmission. So, concerning the European framework, I would like to insist on the voluntary and transitional regulations adopted by Germany in July 2021 by amending the Energy Law Act, das Energiewirtschaftsgesetz. First of all, owners of a pure hydrogen networks or grid, can choose between the classical rules of competition law or these voluntary regimes provided by the Article 28K to 28Q. And you have to keep in mind that the hydrogen grid owners who carry out activities other than the management of transmissions shall keep a separate account and shall ensure that the management of the transmission is independent of the productions, storage, and distributions of hydrogen, and shall ensure the confidentiality of commercially sensitive information of which they are aware. But also, they must provide third parties connections and access to their hydrogen grid on accessible and reasonable and non-discriminatory terms and conditions, and must publish the applicable commercial rules for access to the grid. This is there is also an obligation of the operator to conduct an ad hoc adequacy review on based on the need of the hydrogen grid infrastructures from the point of view of the energy economy. And for the German authority regulator, a positive finding is generally adequate. There is also an obligation of report of the deployment of the hydrogen grid and the elaborations of a future planning with the target year 2035 for the operators. So what about the grid access fees? On the European side, the proposed new directive 2009/73 provided the foundations of the European law on access fees. Firstly, regulated access tariffs should be the default rules by 2030 for hydrogen transport and storage facilities. Otherwise, a negotiated access system can be set up. Secondly, hydrogen terminals will remain subject to negotiated tariffs. Thirdly, border interconnections are fully exempted. This is criticized because free tariffs at interconnections are neither necessary or sufficient to develop a hydrogen market. And finally, for private hydrogen networks, they may be allowed for derogations and exemptions for the regulated regime until 2030. In conclusion, the regulated approach for hydrogen, in my opinion, is dynamic and must allow the technology to be more mature to make hydrogen competitive. The Moroccan and African legal framework must, without a doubt, be reformed and cannot wait. Energy law is law of prevention and not of cure. And thank you for attention.
Thank you very much. So a lot to do yet to actually support the development. Let me welcome now Amin Iba from RedMed Capital. Amin leads the debt and equity capital markets activity of RedMed, assisting company on their financing strategy through capital market fundraising, not only to hydrogen, but in other sector, but definitely a key expert in the sector. So in terms of renewable energy and power to X with international developer mainly. So I mean, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the Moroccan Research Institute for Solar Energy and New Energies and the Mohammed VI Polytechnic University for the great efforts that were put to create this summit and the great organization of this edition. There is an impressive lineup of speakers this year at all levels, policymakers, industry leaders, research experts, and global innovators to discuss this PTX industry and its applications. Our panel is very interesting in many aspects, as it mixes between two great and complex topics: financing and, not to say the least, regulations. So during my presentation, I will go fast on the first slides, since you have already been told everything that is needed. So I will focus on really some aspects related to risks and to asset-based financing. Okay. Well, green hydrogen industry is gathering a strong momentum as a key energy transition pillar. There is in fact a global shift of regulation, investors, developers, and consumers towards decarbonization, and green hydrogen is receiving unprecedented interest and investments. As of 2022, over 30 countries have released hydrogen roadmaps, and the industry has announced more than 200 hydrogen projects and ambitious investment plans. So governments worldwide have committed more than 70 billion in public funding. And if all the projects come to fruition, which we hope all for, total investment will exceed 300 billion in hydrogen spending through 2030. However, and as you can see in the slide, only 80 billion of these investments are currently being considered mature, meaning that the investment is either in a planning stage, has passed FID, or is associated with a project under construction or already commissioned. This momentum exists along the entire value chain and is accelerating cost reduction for hydrogen production, transmission, distribution, retail, and application. So this hydrogen industry is indeed at the crossroad of a variety of sectors. First, as an energy carrier, and a decarbonized energy carrier actually. Second, as a new fuel for a decarbonized industry. And finally, in the mobility sector, mainly in transportation. This makes me say that hydrogen is really at the crossroad of various sectors, and all these sectors need financing at different levels. So this brings us to the next one, which is different business lines. So we'll have a very simplistic look at these business lines. We'll look at the upstream level of the value chain, where the manufacture of green hydrogen production equipment is key. And here we are talking about financing these electrolyzers, which is key for us to enable this industry to expand. At the midstream level, it is about the electrolysis process, electrolysis capacities, and the necessity to develop low carbon electricity generation capacities to power these electrolyzers. And finally, the downstream level, where you have the end users that concern sectors like the industry, the mobility, and heating. Very important, especially for Europeans next winter. End users manufacturing of equipments like fuel cell cars, trucks, buses also. And finally, the logistics chain, which is very important. Why am I talking about the value chain? You will see it's very important because each of these business lines have its own challenges and its own specific risk profiles, and thus should be addressed in a distinct manner concerning financing and funding purposes. So the question now is, how can this hydrogen sector take off, and who are the main stakeholders involved? So let's talk about some stakeholders now. Public support first, through a supportive regulatory framework and public financing and support mechanism, especially at early stages. In fact, a good example would be, to illustrate that, would be the commitment of local authorities and governments to decarbonize public transports and infrastructures. Second, mobilizing private financing is key and has been historically linked to the risk assessment made by the different private financing stakeholders to the sectors at stake. And third, and not the least, we need to have tailor-made and cost-effective financing solutions, taking into account the challenges and risks that I'm going to talk about later of the different assets, entities, and different upstream, midstream that we talked about, business lines to be financed across this whole value chain. So I will discuss later asset-based financing, which is very important for the green hydrogen sector financing. So these three elements are key to make the hydrogen sector attractive and bring a long-lasting momentum. Both the public and the private sector are needed for this sector to take off. We can now deep dive into each one of these what have been said. First and foremost, the sector needs support for large-scale electrolysis projects through hydrogen-friendly regulatory frameworks and putting in place national strategies. Morocco already is at the is a front runner in that, and we have almost 30 countries out of the 200 that are worldwide that do have these national strategies to develop the sector. Second, we have what is really, really important for us is the infrastructure. We need the local authorities and government to provide and engage in providing the necessary infrastructures for large-scale hydrogen projects like especially port facilities for export distribution, like pipelines and transportation networks. Third, we need industrial ecosystems. Sorry. Sorry about that. Just losing my notes. So we need industrial, I will finish without my notes. We need industrial momentum and industrial ecosystems in order to build these industrial ones that needs to be put by authorities. And finally, public financing and subsidies, which are very, very important, especially at early stages of these large-scale projects. Now, I need to talk about what is, for me, the most important thing is mobilizing private financing, which is key in developing any nascent industry. So there are various investment stages in a typical large-scale hydrogen project, and many investors that can be involved. You have various players to this industry that will assess the investment risks at different stages in which the project is before making their investment decision. So first, you have what I call the bold guys, the ones that are going to take and willing to take a lot of risks. These are the developers and the IOCs, the integrated oil companies. They will take investment risk at very early stages. And then you have the less bold guys, I would say, the venture capitalists, renewable funds, and infrastructure funds. These guys are as bold as the previous ones, but they are looking for good opportunities to have nice IRRs at early stages. Third, you have the development banks, and we have a lot of development banks in our panel, so we'll talk about that, and commercial banks that come a little bit later. And they are here for different reasons, but can lend the money needed to start the construction. And finally, you have debt funds, pension funds, and sovereign wealth funds that come at later stages and that are not seeking the same levels of risk as the previous ones. And finally, and not the least, the debt capital markets, which can help refinance at some stage and pour the money that is needed into the project at its operation stage. Not sure if I do have enough time for this one, but I'll try to make it quick. So the asset-based lending, I'd like to tell a story about that. I will tell it as a story. 15 years ago, renewable energies experienced the same challenges and entailed huge risks, as is the case now for the hydrogen. So renewables are indeed a good illustration of where we can stand with green hydrogen 15 years from now. And private financing will for sure play a crucial role in the development of these renewables. It played a crucial role for renewables over the last 15 years and will play a great role in the hydrogen industry. Now, how did this happen and what did it entail? First, asset-based financing is key for renewables, was key for renewables. It will be key for green hydrogen. There are three main reasons I see. It's project debt financing. The nature of the projects gives investors visibility over the long run. So debtors like that, and that is key. Public support is key here since it enables to decrease the perception of risk by investors, which would open up the sector to a whole ecosystem of debtors at various investment stages. Second, we have the curtailment and ring fencing. Actually, it's fairly simple. It's setting an ad hoc entity to bear the risk, and using project finance is key for this sector. And finally, not the least, we need asset-based financing that can mechanically reduce the cost of capital. If you look at the first point, you will understand fairly quickly. Having more debt makes the cost of capital fairly decrease. So what I wanted also to say to wrap up is that the IFIs and the development banks made a lot for Morocco for renewable energies, and they still have a great role to play in the hydrogen sector. But we need to not forget about the Moroccan stakeholders, Moroccan commercial banks, and also the Moroccan equity providers that are here to help the sector, this nascent industry. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for this presentation. We are now going to switch to our last speaker, Zakaria Korte. You're welcome on stage. Zakaria is based in Rabat, but is from the international German firm, and he's advising a large number of German companies here in Morocco. Export obviously is part of the answer or solution. So I think, Zakaria, today you are going to focus more on the EU regulation and explain us what needs to be improved in order to make that solution attractive quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Yes, so it is the last intervention.
Can you speak closer to the mic?
Oh, sorry. Yes, so it is the last intervention before lunch. So I will be brief and stay as, let's say, light as possible, although it's a very theoretical subject I have here today. I have looked into the international regulations which exist at the moment for the trade of hydrogen, of course, green hydrogen, first of all, and have also had a particular maybe look at the risks that entail risk for litigation or arbitration proceedings when trading hydrogen internationally between the EU and supplier countries, like, for example, Morocco. So the international trade regulations, of course, are not adapted to the situation which we are going forward to. It is, of course, necessary to change a lot about it. Treaties will be necessary, treaties in which Morocco, for example, as one of the supplier countries, needs to be involved and needs to be engaged. And yes, so I will start with the definition as we are going forward to in Europe. So in the European Union, we are aiming for a consistent definition which covers the whole, all the member states. This is a very useful approach, of course, looking at the EU and its climate goals, because if it is regulated on a member state level, there's always the risk that there will be a race to the bottom when it comes to the characteristics of the element green in hydrogen. So the EU level definition makes sense, but however, although yeah, just to quickly, what is hydrogen, green hydrogen? We have spoken about it the last 3 days, but I mean, just to be complete here. So yes, we know it is hydrogen which is generated out of green energy sources. But the definition of the EU, as we have it in a proposition from last month, is more complex. One of the elements is, for example, the additionality. I will not go too detailed into it. The other panels have spoken about it. But additionality, for example, just means that the energy source used to produce hydrogen is not older than 36 months in this particular definition. So to take this definition and to just apply it in Morocco, for example, does not make any sense, because the 36-month rule is there to represent the climate and energy goals of the European Union. We have also in the last panel, actually, moderator still with us, heard an argument which sometimes comes up from the Moroccan side, which is, yes, the climate goals as they are formulated in this kind of discussion are mainly driven by European interests. And the Moroccan, for instance, interest will be the same, of course, and it makes sense to be coherent about the climate change, which is of course coming. But there are other also elements which need to be taken into account. The definition, however, does not, in the EU proposition we have from last month, does not make any difference between EU member countries and outside EU countries. And this is exactly the problem we have, because it will, if we would start trading hydrogen now, it would cause problems given the legal context or situation we have internationally. The international trade law, WTO law, says that there would be a discrimination. And of course, the international trade law forbids any kind of discrimination when it comes to the same or like product from two different foreign countries. So if you would, for example, refuse to take off Moroccan hydrogen, just as an example, and however take off other hydrogen from another country outside EU, we cannot base this discrimination on the definition which has been unilaterally found by the EU, because from the WTO law perspective, it is the same product. We have H2, physically the same element, and it has, there's no trace of its CO2 footprint in the product itself. So we cannot use the definition as it is in international trade law. However, even if you would discriminate and therefore violate the international trade law, there are still reasons to justify. And two of them are noted here, found in the Article 22, yes, Latin numbers, 20 of the GATT. And one of them is for the protection of human, animal, and plant life and health. The other justification or reason to justify a violation is for measures which aim at the conservation of exhaustible natural resources. So in case of a refused H2 offtake from Morocco, we can say that, of course, number B of the GATT Article 20 could be relevant here. However, the second justification reason does not really work for an outside EU country when you justify the refuse of an import from it with the reason that they would not have enough water, for instance, in their country. The reason is that this is there would be the principle of sovereignty, which go against this kind of argumentation. So, however, even if we take the first justification as the reason to discriminate, we still have the second condition to fill according to WTO law, which is to justify that there is no arbitrary or unjustifiable discrimination or disguised restriction on international trade. And the burden of proof lays on the country which takes this decision, this violation. So it would be here the EU, and the only way, therefore, well, this is all a hypothesis, but I mean the only way for the EU to be in a legally safe situation would be, of course, to have maybe a treaty in which, together with the supplier state and every one of them, they would define their common definition of what is the element green and hydrogen, or at least, because it's not really necessary to have the treaty established, it is already enough if you are already for now engaged in serious discussions and with the other country about the element, and that it is not the exact same product. So this is yes, so what is needed in an international agreement, or at least the commencement of bilateral and multilateral negotiations, and a transparent, fair, and inclusive negotiation process. So this is actually just a little plaidoyer maybe to Morocco and the Moroccan side of this great cooperation to get more involved in the definition and in the discussion about what we would like to trade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zakaria. So we're going to have a maximum 10 minutes conversation before we close. I think we all agree on the fact that we need long-term visibility, stability of the investment framework. We need public support. We need to create ecosystems. But once we've said that, it's probably much more complex in light of the different usages. Do we need infrastructure or not? Depends where we develop hubs. Do we want to have local consumption? Do we want to support exports? So there is probably not one size fit all in all of that. I would like to ask the panelists to give their conclusion remark on that and to share with the floor, in your view, what would be the key things to unlock, to vote or to change in your special field of action. What is the key measure that is needed quickly to unlock investment and developments? We've got today a large number of MOUs signed. We've got a large bunch of money to be invested, but we're short of bankable projects. So I don't know who wants to kick off, but I would be keen to hear from some of you, maybe not all of you, up to you, your concluding remarks. We've got 10 minutes. Thank you.
Maybe I can go first. So as Anne said, we are short on bankable projects. So for me, we need this integrated approach that look at technology, of course, regulation, but what we need is a pipeline of projects and then engage upstream with project developers to make those bankable projects. I'll stop there.
Thank you. No, I agree with what Rita said. So I'll just pass on to the next.
Yeah, Mayor, I would highlight again solid business models. You have mentioned that there are hundreds and thousands of MOUs around, which is good and which is increasing also the competition for projects. On the other hand, we are currently having quite a lot of work with distinguishing between real MOUs that have a bankable business case behind, and so it's difficult for us to assess the level of intention. And the second part that I would like to mention here is that we really need commitment of the governments also to develop their own roadmap for green hydrogen development, because I think there are different classes of projects around the real big ones like NEOM in Saudi Arabia that is ready to export immediately because of its scale, but different country contexts require different approaches. I would say from the development bank perspective, we also need a business case within our partner countries without going into export immediately.
Maybe from our perspective and focusing on Morocco, because this is the country I cover, but I think we all heard from everyone, obviously, to produce and develop a competitive green hydrogen sector, we need competitive power to start with. And yes, Morocco has great potential, but we still have a fairly complex structure, notably in terms of access to the grid with different layers of tarifications. And it's very important to clarify the relationship between the grid operator and the private developers, notably in relations to the service system, the grid access fees. What we saw is in Egypt, for example, they waived grid fees for early adopters of green hydrogen. So that may be something to consider to sort of kickstart for those who will be looking to be using the grid. For direct wires, we also need to clarify, I mean, this is part of the self-generation law, the amendments. One thing that is needed also, and we are working on it together with the Ministry of Energy Transition, is the development of green certification of origins. So that would be absolutely key to be able to kickstart the industry, and particularly in terms of export to Europe. And I think generally, many have said it, but we need a consistent and staged strategy for the government that goes from megawatts to gigawatts. Morocco has been a first mover in solar and knows what it means. So may want to take a more gradual approach. Morocco has not managed to build a local supply chain in solar. Maybe that's something to look at, because there are capabilities to build manufacturing based on electrolyzers. So all of this, and we know Morocco at the moment is looking at very large investments in gas, in renewables, in ports upgrade, in water desalination. It needs to make sure that all these investments are future ready. They are green hydrogen ready, because those investments are made now for something that's going to happen, you know, in a near to medium future. So this is what investors will be looking at when they arbitrate between different countries for their investments.
From a point of view, I would say that there is a range of questions that we can ask ourselves. But for example, if you take the maritime transport, the regulations is well advanced. For example, the subcommittees of cargoes and containers transport is going to vote this April 2022 the interim regulations provision standards for the ships with sales installations. Regarding to what was said, I think it's an imperative to develop the harmonizations and cooperation between European Union and Morocco, and still just for the green electricity, and then also for green hydrogens, and the fact that there is a lot of points like the codification that should be think in Morocco. Do we need to integrate in the actual regulations or a special law for also the one-shot authorizations? We do not obviously need, I would say, environmental law code. For example, Germany in 2012 decided to make a consultations effect for the authorizations. And these elements, going also to the same point, are gonna increase the investments regulatory framework for investors and in sustainability.
Thank you. Before handing over to Khadija, is going to give us the conclusions of the summit. I would like to thank my great panelists for their contribution, and the audience for being with us today. Thank you very much.
And my turn to thank you and to congratulate you, dear Anne, and all the speakers for the high quality of their interventions, and I shall liberate you so that we can process with the closing ceremony. That was the last session of the summit, the World Power to X Summit. Maybe a group photo? Okay. And just to wrap up, but very briefly, somebody mentioned that it was those 3 days have gathered like an impressive lineup. Hopefully the recommendations will find some echo into all the stakeholders. As I was mentioning in the beginning, of course, the public policy makers, as well as investors, private sector. As a matter of fact, there was agreements that have been signed during this summit, which is a positive maybe sign for the future, as long as we get into pragmatic and concrete results from those agreements in the future. So I would also add that each country has its own specificities and needs. And what we heard, I mean, from the presentations, I mean, it tackled some issues that are maybe general and some issues that concern Morocco in particular. And as you might know, all of you, that Morocco is on a new way of development, namely the new development model, which is centered around the human capital. And again, I really emphasize on the need to tackle the human issues and the issues that are related to the populations, because at the end of the day, all those strategies, all those roadmaps, it's for the future of humankind. And the future of humankind is in Africa, as it's the continent of the future, and Morocco, as a matter of fact, to the leadership toward being like a major world actor in renewable energies. So let's hope that this is going to be consistent in the near future, so that it builds and it puts the cornerstone for a green hydrogen industry made in Morocco, for Morocco, but also for the rest of the neighborhood, neighborhood. Okay, the next part was not in the initial program, but let's say it is just maybe the fruit, or it is the result of the success of this World P2X Summit. It is actually a reward, or shall I say an award. It is the Trophée de l'Africanité. Let me introduce you to the concept. It was created in 2018 to choose or to select, to honor initiatives that contribute to the radiance of human, social, cultural, spiritual, economic, financial, and sports development, highlighting the values of Africanity. And I really stress up on this notion of Africanity. So this award this year is going to be congratulating somehow the efforts of the organizers of such an exclusive event, a successful event, and that was in the tongue of many of the participants. I now call the founder, the president founder of the Trophée de l'Africanité, which came along from Casablanca just to give this award to the Director General of IRESEN. I call Nasrallah Belkhiyat to join me on stage. He's the president founder of Trophée de l'Africanité. And maybe he's got some words to share. Good afternoon. Okay, maybe with the working mic on the reading desk.
Merci.
Samir Rashidi is always here for a precious help.
Merci
Is it
beaucoup.
for a mic or for?
Merci
Yes.
infiniment. Très brièvement. Donc, comme elle a très bien dit, pour la présentation, la Fondation Trophée de l'Africanité existe depuis 2018 et nous encourageons l'africanité dans tous les domaines, et particulièrement la femme africaine, parce que la Fondation croit énormément au changement possible par la femme africaine. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes ici présents pour féliciter l'organisation de cet événement. C'est une initiative qui permet de montrer, grâce à l'intervention des experts qui ont accepté de se déplacer, de venir, de nous faire part de leur expertise pour placer l'hydrogène vert avec l'Afrique sur la scène internationale. C'est pour cela que je reviens directement d'un voyage des îles Comores où j'ai été invité par le président Azali Assoumani, où je lui ai remis le trophée de l'africanité pour le plan de commerce émergent. Et là, aujourd'hui, je suis très heureux d'être parmi vous pour honorer l'équipe d'organisation de Aerozen. Alors, avant cela, je vais donner mon souhait, un désir. J'aurais souhaité que le prochain rendez-vous, si c'est possible, qu'on puisse parler de l'hydrogène naturel, parce que quand on veut parler de l'hydrogène naturel, on parle de l'autonomie énergétique en Afrique, et comme vous le savez, l'hydrogène naturel, c'est dans le monde entier. Vous avez le Mali, le Burkina Faso, le Sénégal, et ça peut énormément être une grande solution pour le peuple africain. Donc, voilà, je vais passer la parole donc, à notre conseillère de la Fondation Trophée de l'Africanité.
Alors, je vous demanderai juste d'être très bref parce que les gens ont très faim. Voilà, c'est en quelques mots, madame.
Oui. La seule chose, c'est que l'appel pour l'hydrogène naturel est là. Il va circuler dans la salle et pour ne pas vous faire perdre votre repas, durant le repas, pour que vous puissiez le signer.
Super.
Ça me ferait très plaisir.
Merci
Alors,
beaucoup, madame. Merci. Et donc là, pour la remise des trophées de l'africanité, donc là, je vais appeler sur scène le directeur général d'Irezen, Samir Rashidi, sous vos applaudissements, mesdames, messieurs.
Félicitations, Samir. Félicitations à vous et à votre équipe pour l'organisation.
Je tiens juste à faire une petite entorse, si possible, d'inviter Nouhaila et Youb avec moi pour prendre le prix, parce que c'est un prix pour Irezen. Merci beaucoup.
Bien sûr.
Bravo. Toutes mes félicitations. Congratulations. Et
Donc, félicitations à toutes les équipes d'Irezen avec à leur tête Samir Rashidi. Et puis aussi à l'africanité de l'approche du Maroc sous bien sûr la vision éclairée de Sa Majesté le roi Mohamed VI, et qu'il disait il n'y a pas plus tard qu'il y a quelques jours lors du sommet des investisseurs africains, des fonds d'investissement, des fonds souverains, qui rappelaient que l'Afrique était un choix de cœur et de raison. Donc, Samir Rashidi, je le disais il y a quelques instants, maybe should I switch to English? Yeah, there were some partnership agreements that have been signed, but you have a couple of announcements to share with us as well to close this wonderful 3 days of World PTX Summit. So, please.
Thank you very much, dear Ihsan, for the very well hosting of this last day. And thank you very much to all the participants that made it today, the most courageous one that stayed with us till the end. So yeah, indeed, we can consider from an organizer point of view, it's always difficult to say that it is a successful edition because we are always checking and having notifications from WhatsApp group, sound is not working, people are not here, etc. But I think I've got tremendous positive feedback from yourself. All of you, I had really the time to speak with many of you and to collect also positive vibes and energy. Thank you very much. It's really precious because as we know, the economy of energy needs a lot of collaboration and partnership. And the fact of you being here today is really a testimony to your testimony of your trust and also friendship to countries like Morocco that would like to be a host for the hydrogen industry. So thank you very much for that, and you need a great applause. Thank you. After that, I have some key messages that were collected by my colleagues during the presentations, the different sessions. As I said, in the beginning, we have plus 90 speakers from 30 plus countries and also 9 sessions that are spread in many aspects of the hydrogen value chain. So, as you may know, the world is running a fierce race to the leadership of the hydrogen economy, especially the green hydrogen markets, to fulfill the commitments of carbon neutrality. Green hydrogen would be competitive within a decade, given the renewable energy low cost and proximity of countries with substantial solar and wind potential and long distances overlooking the coast, as Morocco has as advantages. Research and innovation acceleration throughout the green hydrogen value chain in the fields of hybridization of clean electricity sectors, electrolyzers, as well as technologies of storage and transportation, but also water desalination are also subjects that are of most importance. Projects currently in the last phase of demonstration projects, and also we are happy of what have been shared by the colleagues from the UM6 Polytechnique and also from OCP and GESA about already ongoing feasibility and even sometimes feed or pre-feed studies for concrete demonstration projects. One important point that was also brought into the table during the different discussions was the role of the government that is crucial to prepare the ground, legislation, regulations framework, but also incentives and certifications. There have been also pointed out that there is a great need to establish an incentive system that reward first movers, especially to catalyze and to trigger the market during this coming decade. There was also a recommendation of taking advantage of local industrial and logistical advances that Morocco has made during these 2 last decades, under the reign of His Majesty the King Mohammed VI, especially in terms of renewables, infrastructure, and also capacity building of Moroccan talented engineers, researchers, and technicians. And that was all from the recommendation point of view, and thank you very much for all of that. I would like also to make a special announcement about our Green Hydrogen magazine that has been launched during this summit, and you could have a paper copy of it. If not, you could also connect with the colleagues to have a virtual. So that was the first edition, but that will also be supported throughout the years. Last but not least, I think I would like to thank all the sponsors and partners, and a special thank to the official Namibian and the official Korean and German delegations that helped us and support us through their presence to make it to Morocco in person and to deliver a great message of partnerships and discussions about the green hydrogen and how we could help each other, because it's what we are preparing now overcome or surpasses each country individually. So we need to get together to make it happen. A special thank also to the World Bank for supporting, especially Nadia, and also to the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung for their support, the DII, Desertec Industrial Initiative, and the UNIDO for being supporting partners. A special thank to the South Korean Embassy, especially His Excellency, Mr. Chong, for supporting us and being a great partner to the event. I would like to make a special thank to my colleagues again, our dream team, Hydrogen in Morocco, and a great applause. And if I may also invite them to join the stage to be applauded as it should be. Please, colleagues. Hello. Diane, CM, tout le monde. Because I am good at making the interface, but the real work is theirs. I am just entertaining you, but they are the people that have done everything, and I am really grateful for them to them. They have joined nights and days to make this happen, even before the edition of December that was cancelled, and it was pretty much kind of full-time job, especially during the last weeks. So thank you very much to them. Thank you. Last but not least, I would like to thank our partners, organizing partners, the UM6P University and the Green Hydrogen Cluster, and also our diamond sponsor, OCP Group. Thank you very much. And last, really last thing is to announce the next edition. So please put it in your calendars. The third edition of the World PTX Summit will be from the 20th to the 22nd of June 2023, and it would be in Marrakesh, but also since Her Excellency, the President of the region, Mrs. Bouida, invited us to Gulmim. We will also have a program in Gulmim Wedno. Thank you very much. Thank you, and see you next year.
Thank you so much, Samir Rashidi. Thank you all for attending and for making the trip all the way to Morocco. For those coming from abroad, and again, I wish you a safe trip back home and see you next year. It was a pleasure for me to accompany and to master the ceremony. Thank you very much. Shukran, merci, et bon appétit.